Hey everyone, Gerald here. Today, I thought I'd make a serious video. I don't know about you, but I often go to thrift stores with the hope that I'm going to discover something like a Flying V or a Fender Esquire and be able to walk out the door with it for about 40, 50 bucks. I mean, that would be amazing. And, one thing I like to wonder is, what would I do if I got my hands on an authentic Gibson Burst? Perhaps in the Finnish homeland, a long-lost uncle dies, and when they're going through his things, they find a guitar case under his bed. Tracing ancestry, they find out that a nephew in the United States with perfect hair plays guitar, so they ship it to me. Next in the scenario that I've never thought about before this video or before even saying it right now, I get something in the mail. It's a guitar case. I open it up. Boom. 1959 Gibson Les Paul in perfect condition. I take the guitar out of the case, plug it in the old JCM 800, and play a riff, probably something like this. I'd clearly run into a pretty difficult problem. There's no Floyd Rose on the Burst, so I'd have to add one myself. Vintage guitars could really benefit from a modern refresh. Imagine this with this on it. I could probably go here, here. I don't know. I don't know if the placement would be so important, but as long as it got on there, you could just dive bomb this thing. It'd be amazing. You could just dive bomb this thing. You could just dive bomb this thing. You could just dive bomb this thing. Here's a good example of something similar to the Coronet that I just showed you guys. Epiphone ET290 made in Japan in the 70s. This one's got some humbuckers added to it. It's got a kill switch that lights up purple when you plug in the cord. Some coil splitting or tapping, whatever it's called. And then it also has a Kaler, which is pretty neat. Pretend this is the Les Paul that we're talking about in the beginning. We want to stick this bad boy on there. There's probably a proper way to do it, but honestly, I think that, the cool thing about these guitars is it's already got everything lined up, so you can probably eyeball it. There's such a length to get up to the top here. What is this, 24 3/4 scale length? You can kind of just eyeball where this is going to go, and you get some wiggle room because, it's stretching across almost 3 feet, so there's some room for error. So I think basically, if you want to put a Floyd Rose on a vintage guitar, just start drilling pretty much anywhere on here to route out the body. In summary, that's what I'd do if I received an authentic 59 Gibson Les Paul Burst. I put a Floyd Rose on it. I mean, it's a great guitar, I'm sure, as is, stock. Some famous people have used them and stuff, and it looks really cool. But just for me as a player, if I can't just dive bomb the thing, I don't know how much use I'd get out of it. But you know what? I do know that there are some Les Paul Bursts made with Floyd Roses, and whether it's done before or it comes like that from the factory, often you can't even really tell. It just looks so good with the body. And one other thing I should mention is I brought this up to guitar companies. I've sent Gibson some designs that I had to improve some of their guitars in their lineup. I'm still waiting to hear back from them. It was a few years ago. Probably so many people email them, whatever. But I do have some good ideas on how some classic models could be revamped, and we'll see where that goes. I'm just going to keep pushing it. I think, in summary, Floyd Rose on pretty much every guitar, whether it's, a priceless heirloom or I think it's probably better if it's a priceless heirloom, because then, you're going to cherish it, but then you're going to also be able to use it, just dive bombing it rigorously, which is, what's needed with a good guitar. That's all I really got today. I really like the Floyd Rose system, and I think that all guitars could benefit from having it. And I think also, too, that routing the guitar body yourself will form an extra bond with the instrument and, make it a little bit more special when you're just dive bombing it. I also, would love to have a Floyd Rose on myself too. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe. I don't know if the placement would be so important, but as long as it got on there, you could just dive bomb this thing. I don't know if the placement would be so important, but as long as it got on there, you could just dive bomb this thing. I don't know if the placement would be so important, but as long as it got on there, you could just dive bomb this thing. The placement would be so important, but as long as it got on there, you could just dive bomb this thing. 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 The placement would be so important, but as long as it got on there, you could just dive bomb this thing.